There is a reason you will never be rich, and it has nothing to do with money. It begins much earlier, long before numbers enter the conversation. It starts the moment your mind learns to seek permission instead of leverage. Most men never notice this shift. They call it being realistic, responsible, grounded. In truth, it is the exact moment their future becomes capped. Poverty is not a lack of resources. It is a pattern of obedience installed so early it feels like identity. Watch how most men think about wealth. They ask how long it will take. They ask what is safe. They ask what others are doing. These questions seem intelligent, but they quietly reveal submission. The rich never start by asking how to fit inside the system. They ask where it bends, where it leaks, where it breaks. Machiavelli would never admire patience without position. Waiting without leverage is not discipline. It is dependence with better posture. The real barrier is not opportunity, it is exposure. Wealth requires visibility, friction, and discomfort. Most men avoid all three. They choose stability over tension, approval over leverage, clarity over ambiguity. They want guarantees before movement. But money flows toward those who move while outcomes are unclear. The moment you demand certainty, you price yourself out of power. Systems do not reward caution, they exploit it. Look closely and you will see the pattern everywhere. Men who work harder but stay invisible. Men who follow rules perfectly and wonder why nothing changes. Men who are useful but never necessary. Utility is not power. Reliability is not leverage. The system needs workers who believe effort equals reward. That belief keeps it clean, predictable, profitable for someone else. You are taught that money comes from value. That is only partially true. Money comes from perceived leverage, from control over timing, access, and pressure. If others can replace you easily, your value collapses no matter how skilled you are. If you wait for recognition, you surrender position. Recognition follows disruption, not obedience. Those who accumulate wealth rarely ask for permission to exist loudly. Here is the uncomfortable truth. Most men do not want to be rich. They want to be safe and respected while staying small. They want wealth without changing posture, without altering how others feel in their presence. That is impossible. Money amplifies who you already are. If you are deferential, it will never come close. It avoids men who explain themselves. This is why nothing changes year after year. You refine habits, not positioning. You improve efficiency, not leverage. Growth happens quietly, so no hierarchy is disturbed. The system rewards you with survival and calls it progress. But survival was never the goal. Power was, and power only moves toward those who stop asking and start forcing reality to respond. Money never disappears by accident, it is redirected. And most men never notice the redirection because it feels like normal life. Bills, obligations, small comforts, small rewards. Nothing dramatic, nothing alarming. That is how the system prefers it. Loud losses create resistance. Silent losses create compliance. You don't feel robbed, you feel occupied. The real reason you'll never be rich is not lack of opportunity. Opportunities are everywhere. It is lack of position. You live inside structures designed by other people, optimized for their leverage, not yours. And you follow the rules faithfully, believing obedience will be rewarded. Machiavelli would never confuse loyalty to a system with power inside it. He understood that systems reward usefulness first, not virtue. Look at how most men relate to money. They chase income but avoid control. They increase effort but avoid dominance. They negotiate harder with themselves than with the world. Every raise comes with more responsibility, not more authority. Every bonus comes with more dependency. You feel progress, yet nothing truly changes. That is not growth. That is refinement of captivity. The invisible trap is identity. You define yourself by stability, reliable, dependable, needed. These words feel safe, but they are expensive. Stability is valuable only to those who own the structure. For everyone else, it is a ceiling disguised as protection. The moment your value is tied to consistency, your income becomes capped by predictability. Notice how fear hides behind rational language. You say you are being realistic, responsible, patient. What you are actually doing is avoiding asymmetry. Wealth does not come from fairness. It comes from leverage, from being positioned where outcomes bend in your favor. Most men are taught to avoid those positions because they create discomfort, risk, visibility, judgment. So they choose certainty and wonder why nothing compounds. Machiavellian logic never condemned ambition. It warned against naivete. Power moves quietly toward those who understand incentives, not intentions. Money follows the same rule. It accumulates where decisions affect many, not where effort exhausts one. You are not poor because you don't work hard. You are poor because your work does not alter structure. You operate inside permission, and permission is always temporary. The system allows you to earn just enough to remain functional, just enough to stay loyal, just enough to never rebel. The most dangerous belief is that time will solve this. Time does not change position, time solidifies it. Each year spent trading effort for approval locks the pattern deeper. By the time you realize what happened, you are too optimized for a role you never chose. This is where the separation begins. Not with money, but with awareness. And awareness is uncomfortable because it forces you to see how much of your life was shaped by rules you never questioned. There is a reason this pattern keeps repeating in your life, and it has nothing to do with luck, education, or effort. It has to do with how you relate to power before you ever touch money. Most men chase income while broadcasting submission. They work harder while signaling fear. They save, plan, optimize, and still remain poor in influence, which makes wealth temporary even when it appears. Money does not stay where authority is missing. It leaks, quietly, predictably. Notice how most men talk about money. There is always justification in their voice. They explain why they want it, what they would do with it, how they would use it responsibly. That explanation is already a confession. Power never explains its hunger. It assumes entitlement without apology. Machiavelli would never advise a man to beg reality for permission while expecting it to obey him. Poverty is not just a financial state. It is a behavioral signature. It shows up in how quickly you accept terms, how fast you compromise your position, how easily you trade long leverage for short relief. Rich men are not patient because they are virtuous. They are patient because they are positioned. Poor men rush because time feels hostile when you have no control over outcomes. Look closely at how decisions are made around you. Who sets the frame? Who defines what is reasonable? Who waits and who reacts? Money follows the man who waits while others reveal themselves. The one who does not flinch when opportunity hesitates. The one who can let silence pressure the other side first. Most men cannot tolerate that discomfort. They rush to fill it with compliance. This is why effort fails you. Effort without authority only makes you useful. Useful men are paid enough to stay dependent, never enough to leave. Systems reward those who stabilize them, not those who challenge their structure. If you are always reliable, always agreeable, always available, you are not valuable. You are manageable. The dangerous part is that this feels responsible. You call it discipline. You call it humility. You call it realism. In reality, it is fear disguised as maturity. You choose certainty over leverage. You choose approval over dominance. And the world responds accordingly. It gives you safety instead of wealth. Money does not respond to need, it responds to control. It moves toward those who already behave as if they are not impressed by it, those who can lose it without panic, those who do not organize their identity around its absence. Scarcity is loud, authority is quiet. If this makes you uncomfortable, that is the point. The reason you will never be rich is not outside you. It is encoded in how you move, how you speak, how you decide before anyone is watching. Change that, and money becomes a consequence, not a pursuit. Ignore it, and no strategy will save you. Wealth is decided long before numbers appear. It is decided in how you relate to control, delay, and discomfort. Money only exposes what is already there. People assume poverty begins in the wallet, but it actually begins in reaction. The need to feel relieved quickly. The urge to explain yourself when pressure rises. The habit of choosing certainty over leverage. These patterns quietly drain future power while convincing you that you are being practical. Notice how poor decisions rarely feel reckless in the moment. They feel reasonable. They feel justified. They feel like relief. You trade long-term positioning for short-term calm and tell yourself you are being realistic. This is how people remain broke without ever feeling irresponsible. Machiavelli would never confuse comfort with safety, because safety that costs leverage is just delayed loss. Look at how money responds to authority. It does not move toward effort. It does not reward sincerity. It follows structure. It flows to those who can wait without leaking urgency, who can say no without explaining, who can hold tension without resolving it prematurely. The inability to tolerate psychological pressure is more expensive than any bad investment. Most financial failure comes from emotional transparency. Showing your need too early, revealing your limits before they are tested, negotiating against yourself. Every time you rush to prove value, you lower it. Every time you seek approval, you surrender position. Wealth requires opacity, not deception, but restraint. The discipline to not reveal everything you feel, want, or fear. Debt is not always financial. Sometimes it is behavioral. You owe explanations, you owe reassurance, you owe compliance. These invisible debts compound faster than interest. People sense when you are carrying them, and they price you accordingly. Influence shrinks when your reactions are predictable. Income follows influence, not effort. You were taught that working harder solves money problems. Hard work without leverage only makes you reliable. Reliability is useful, but it is rarely rewarded proportionally. Power listens to those who can walk away, those who are not dependent on immediate outcomes, those who understand that scarcity is not lack of resources, but lack of control over timing. The uncomfortable truth is that most people are priced exactly where their nervous system places them, how they respond to uncertainty, how quickly they chase relief, how badly they need validation. Change that, and money responds. Not instantly, not dramatically, but inevitably, the structure shifts. This is not about ambition, it is about posture, about refusing to rush, about letting silence work, about holding your ground when nothing is guaranteed. Machiavelli would never advise chasing wealth directly. He would advise building the frame that wealth cannot ignore. Once that frame is set, the rest follows without asking permission. Money never responds to effort the way people expect. It does not reward discipline, intelligence, or sacrifice by default. It reacts to positioning, to how you are perceived before you speak, to what others assume you control without proof. Most men stay poor not because they lack skill, but because they announce their need too loudly. Need repels leverage. The moment money senses urgency, it raises its price or disappears. Watch how men talk about opportunity. They chase clarity. They ask questions too early. They seek reassurance before risk enters the room. Every question reveals dependence. Every need for certainty lowers authority. Wealth moves toward those who tolerate ambiguity without signaling fear. Machiavelli would never confuse preparation with exposure. He understood that power waits for those who do not rush. The invisible problem is behavioral. Poor men negotiate from explanation. Rich men negotiate from silence. One tries to convince, the other allows assumptions to form. Assumptions are more powerful than facts. When you explain yourself, you reduce yourself. When you justify your price or timeline, you invite the other side to adjust you downward. Most men think income is about work. It is not. Income reflects how replaceable you appear. The more eager you are, the easier you are to replace. The more flexible you become, the less necessary you feel. Money respects scarcity, not morality. It flows toward those who seem difficult to corner or rush. Notice how scarcity operates, not in resources, but in demeanor. A man who can walk away without drama changes negotiation. A man who can pause without filling space shifts control without speaking. A man who does not react immediately forces recalibration. This is not confidence. It is containment. And containment creates gravity. Most men leak value through emotional transparency. They reveal frustration, hope, impatience. They believe honesty builds trust. In reality, predictability builds ceilings. The more others can map your reactions, the less they need to offer. Wealth avoids men whose internal state is visible. There is a reason certain men are paid for presence, not output. Their restraint suggests leverage. Their calm implies options. Their lack of urgency signals abundance. Machiavellian thinking never depended on wealth first. It depended on control of perception. If you remain poor while working hard, it is because your behavior tells the world you will accept less. You say it with your speed, your tone, your willingness to over-deliver without renegotiation. Money listens carefully. The men who break this pattern do not suddenly work more. They remove desperation from their posture. They stop chasing validation through productivity. They allow silence to do damage. They let others feel the risk of losing access to them. And slowly, without announcement, the terms change. Power rewards those who wait without revealing intent. Money never disappears by accident. It leaks through habits that feel harmless and choices that feel justified. Wealth doesn't reject you loudly. It watches how you wait, how quickly you explain yourself under pressure, how often you trade certainty for comfort, and then it moves elsewhere. Not because you lack ability, but because you've shown your limits. The reason you won't be rich isn't opportunity. It's permission. Who you let interrupt your focus. What emotions decide your timing. Every financial ceiling starts as a psychological one. Money doesn't respond to effort. It responds to structure, restraint, and the ability to hold tension without urgency. Machiavelli would never confuse motion with progress. Scarcity hides as responsibility. You delay, you overthink. You wait for clarity that never comes. While you hesitate, someone less prepared but more decisive takes your place. Money rewards positioning, not intelligence. Where you stand when uncertainty enters matters more than what you know. Most people seek validation before results. They soften their moves to stay acceptable. Each adjustment trades leverage for approval. Wealth comes from acting before permission feels safe, from tolerating misunderstanding longer than others tolerate discomfort. If this creates resistance, notice it. That resistance is the final barrier, the part that prefers comfort over consequence. Stop negotiating with it, and patterns begin to break. Quietly, inevitably, and money stops feeling distant.